Good morning, good morning, good morning. Here we are on the 4th of January, and I am back. Thank you all for watching the first series of this new thing that I'm testing out, which is basically reading with the AlkaliYogi. I decided to start this new venture, if you will, because I wanted to, as a licensed and practicing holistic practitioner, give you guys more than what you're getting out there, which are oftentimes like tweets or sound bites or very narrative and agenda driven ideas as to how to pursue health by either the mainstream media or a celebrity, without a lot of meat and content and substance into why you should do this or take that, yada, yada, yada. And that's kind of just, on par with everything else about the world that we live in. I would say, given ever since really the introduction of social media, is that we've become a society that's happy to make decisions basically uninformed, for lack of a better term, right? When you consider that so many people feel that they are experts, that they can speak intelligently on something just because they can regurgitate a meme or a headline or somebody's tweet, et cetera, without even really going into the article that may have been attached to said headline, maybe looking at clinical trials and real data, how big was the actual focus group, were the clinical studies conducted, accordingly to be considered even valid. Was science actually practiced here, or was this particular study that is being used to sort of perpetuate this this trend or this product even, was it funded by a corporation that has a vested interest in you taking said product? And not all corporations are nefarious. There are some really decent corporations out there, but major scientific studies need to be coming from a very neutral sort of, if you will, standing, right? If you are a pharmaceutical company that is paying a great deal of money to have your product tested, you're going to want to get a return on that money. You're going to want the clinical data to, vouch and co-sign your product. That can get very, very sticky. This is, arguably one of the biggest faults of the time that we are living in, is the fact that you can't have truly objective information and clinical trials and results and data if your funding comes from somebody who is too invested in the outcome and needs to see their product on the shelves and moving and doing well, so that the shareholders can be satisfied in the returns on their own investment. It's one of the many, many issues that we're grappling with in this capitalistic sort of society that we have perpetuated over here in the West. So that's kind of the reason. It's one of the reasons why I've started this new series with you all, which I hope you will enjoy and you will benefit from. Now, I won't always be reading word for word verbatim. Sometimes I've highlighted things and I'll just kind of take bits and pieces. So we're not going to be sitting here necessarily reading everything word for word. I will be stopping and interjecting at times and maybe providing other examples. Maybe I'll include an example from one of my clients, or maybe I'll include another study or something to back something up, to again give you some meat and substance for which you can feel good about when deciding, is this product or is this behavioral modification right for me? The other reason why I'm doing this is that because we are living in unprecedented times where we're observing the greatest transfer of wealth ever seen in humanity, in probably since existence, really. And because of that, a lot of people are struggling and are not able to buy a lot of these great books that are out here. But books is what we need more than ever. We don't need tweets. We don't need sound bites. We certainly don't need celebrities who don't know a thing about health and wellness to tell us what we should be eating, consuming, what diet we should be following. What we need is to go back to old school information gathering and information and just the knowledge base rather that a book can give you, right? So whilst I don't have as many books nearly as I would like to have right now, and I say that because recently I heard Paul Chek himself say that he has spent over $1 million on books, that his current library is literally containing over $1 million worth of money spent on books, which I think is a phenomenal education. And this is coming, by the way, from a man who didn't even go to college. So that's really impressive. So that is to say, whilst I don't have all of the books that I would love to have in my library as yet, some of the books that I have are still incredibly useful and full of information. And so what I have, I am prepared to share with you all, because I think that in times like this is when we have to come together as a community and really pool our resources. So you can consider this a way of us pooling those resources together. I want this for us because the truth is, fam, that we are very much responsible for our health or lack thereof today. And this is what health professionals don't want to tell you, but that I'm prepared to tell you. 85% of all sickness and ailments, we could literally reverse and cure ourselves if we made some behavioral modifications. If we decided to take accountability for ourselves and transition from just being child or even young adults into mature warriors, peaceful warriors, of course, but warriors that are ready to stand in their to stand on their own 2 feet and claim their own health and wellness back by actually making some changes that may or may not be comfortable. You see, we have moved so far away from how our ancestors were living that we have created new diseases that didn't even exist, quite literally. And if you don't believe me, look at the pets that we have domesticated. They now are also suffering from some of the same ailments that we have managed to create for ourselves, whether it's anxiety or depression or diabetes or cancer. Animals which have never had to contend with any of these things, now eating off of our tables, are experiencing the same symptomology and the same dis-ease that we are experiencing. So that should show you that what we created, we can also undo. That should be empowering to you. That is my hope, anyways, is that this empowers you, because the last thing I want to do is tell you that you need to go and see someone in a white lab coat who's going to put pen to paper and just write you a prescription and tell you to continue about your day, continue eating what you're eating, drinking what you're drinking, going to bed when you're going to bed, when clearly none of this stuff is working for us. We didn't even have night owls 150 years ago because there simply wasn't a way for us to stay up into the wee hours of the night scrolling on social media feeds or taking in content, right? Which meant that we were able to rise and sleep with the sun, which meant that our bodies were able to do what they're designed to do, which is heal. Out of a 24-hour day, your body takes only 4 hours to heal. And those hours are always between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. That doesn't change. Your psychological repair is happening between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. That's out of every 24-hour cycle. So if you're foregoing that sleep, you are foregoing your physical health as well as your psychological health. Consider that. Those are your healing times, right? So if you have gone for days, weeks, or months, or even years, not actually benefiting from that healing, which is designed to take place only during those very specific times, it's no surprise then that you're maybe seeing fibromyalgia, you're maybe seeing eczema, you're maybe experiencing depression, because you've not given yourself, the body, the opportunity to do what it does, which is to literally download, debrief, and heal during its sleep cycle. So things for you to consider, right? So I am here, like I said, to help empower you, to give you some of the tools that will, I hope, uh, bring you back to where you optimally would like to be. Um, Before I get started, I also want to say this. Yes, I will be reading from books. However, I always encourage you, because things are constantly changing, right? Science does evolve. That's what science is observation of things, and as they change, anything that is living is going to change and evolve. So to say that whatever I tell you today is absolute truth and cannot change in time would be deceptive, would be me lying to you. So whilst I want you to take what I tell you and marinate on it, meditate on it, I also want you to challenge it. That's what it's here for, and that's the only way that we are ever going to get to a place where we can all live our fullest potential, is if we can have engaging, intellectual, interesting, but loving, not but, and loving dialogue. What do I mean when I say loving? I don't mean you have to walk on shells or pander to anyone. What I mean is let it come from your heart center and not your ego, right? It's how you deliver the message, and it's the intention behind the message that will determine whether or not you are coming from a place of love or have other intentions. Because anything worth believing is worth discussing. It's worth testing. Actually, Paul Chek said it himself really well. I was watching his video yesterday, where he did the year in review. I highly recommend you guys check it out. It's on his YouTube channel, where he recaps 2022 and is providing us again some wisdom for how we can go into 2023 and how can we liberate ourselves from not only our own personal prisons that we create with our mind and our own limitations, but the prison that is being created for us by some would say nefarious politicians and leaders, corporations, organizations, etc. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? So I'm just going to let him say it, because, again, I want you to feel empowered to always bring me, if you have information that goes against what I'm providing you, please bring me your receipts and let's have a conversation about it. This is not meant to be a monologue. You've heard me say that before. Quite frankly, I look forward to the point where this channel grows enough to the point where we have other people that are sharing and reading, other health experts or just lay people who, have tapped into their own way of healing based on their wisdom, their intuition. I'm here for all of that. So I'm just going to play you a quick little sound bite. Here I am after saying, don't listen to the sound bites. I'm going to play for you a sound bite. You see how flawed we are as humans.
To be an adult, it's important to remember any belief worth living is worth challenging. So the most important question we can ask ourselves with anything to do with beliefs about God or even not God is it really true? If you cannot answer with an affirmative, absolutely yes, then it should be considered to be a temporary operating system that you're willing to be open-minded about and upgrade whenever you come to an impasse where you find believing that or acting that way is creating more limitation for yourself and others than it is freedom.
So that was at around the 31-minute mark. If any of you are interested in finding that, like I said, it's from Paul Chek's Year in Review. I highly recommend listening to the entire thing. Quite frankly, I recommend you subscribe to his channel. Over many, many years, Paul Chek has been uploading content onto YouTube and dropping gems, I'm telling you. And as a Chek practitioner who's still very much in Chek school, so to speak, the program to become a Chek practitioner is not inexpensive. So if you're able to get yourself some free knowledge from Paul Chek, do it. And then if you are still struggling, that's when you come and hire a Chek practitioner like myself, because he takes us obviously further when we're in the academy. We get very specific and fine-tuned training to help people restore their health and wellness. So if you were here the other day, we covered chapter 1. I'm actually going to be moving on from chapter 1 to chapter 3. This is the book that we're covering, Eat, Move, and Be Healthy by Chap, because it makes sense. This is one of the first books that I got almost 20 years ago, really, now, when I started to become really interested in health and wellness. I may have still been living in London, England at that time. That's actually where I met my first Czech practitioner, who ended up being my mentor for a good decade or so. And so I thought this would be the perfect book to begin this new series with. The success of the series, of course, is going to be based on how well you will receive it, and if you like, and watch and tell your friends, as well as subscribe. So we've already gone over chapter 1. Chapter 2 is really about the program itself. It kind of outlines how you would, as a layperson, without the help of a Czech practitioner, use this book to restore your own health and wellness. So chapter 2 just kind of gives you the outline of what the book is going to cover, which is your first step needs to be cultivating your dream, knowing what your core values are, and answering a bunch of questionnaires. Your step 2 would be your nutrition and addressing that. That's actually where we're going to the chapter that you and I are going to get into today. We're not going into dream and core values and questionnaires because this is a very general conversation, and I'm not dealing with any one client or person in particular. Everyone's goal is going to be different. Everyone's dream is going to be different. I should say everyone's core values is going to be different. And also your questionnaire results would not be the same for any two people, because every person is individual. Step 3, we'll be talking a bit about movement, and the correct movement is your movement to yin. Is it too yang? Is it too catabolic is another way of saying that, or too anabolic? And then step 4 of the book kind of talks about your lifestyle, right? And this covers things from like what we put on the skin. What we put on the skin obviously goes into the body, so it matters. What we expose ourselves to in terms of electricity, dirty EMFs and radiation, how much grounding are we getting, the clothes on our bodies, for instance. Incidentally, guys, I'm very happy to report that I am wearing all natural fibers from head to toe. Let me tell you, this right here is a jumper from Groceries Apparel. Also, this is not a sponsored video, but Groceries Apparel, I have reached out to you before, yeah? So whenever you're ready to do this thing, let's do it. So this jumper is from Groceries Apparel. They're based out of Los Angeles, California. So is my tee underneath here. And so are my yoga leggings. Everything is made from natural fibers. So if it's either hemp or cotton or eucalyptus, no polyester, nothing plastic, nothing that comes from a laboratory. Even the way that they color their clothes is done using like vegetable dyes from like carrots and coffee grinds, etc. So really, really sustainable clothing. Great for the earth, which means inevitably it's going to be great for me, or I should say, because it's great for me, it's going to be great for the earth, right? Because we are the same, right? And however I treat myself is obviously how I'm going to treat Mother Earth. So these things matter. And if you don't think that they do, stay with me on this journey. You will overstand and understand why everything counts, as all stress summates in the body. And if you're needing to restore your health, these are tips that you're going to want to take, and these are behavioral modifications that you'll want to consider. Because again, doctors aren't going to tell you, but you are responsible. Primarily, you are responsible for your health or lack thereof today, because it is your decisions that got you here. What you ate, what you drank when you went to bed, what you expose yourself to, even in terms of content, stinking thinking or not, or good books or good content to uplift your spirits and your soul, what time you went to bed, the friends that you currently have, the romantic relationship that you might be in, et cetera, et cetera. All of these decisions are impacting your health, whether you know it or not. You are a system of systems. There is no separation, none whatsoever. So any improvement you make in any one of those areas that I've just mentioned to you will have a positive impact on your health. That I can guarantee, or your money back. All right, so moving on to chapter 3, yeah? Not all of the intros are going to be this long, I hope. I can be quite long-winded. Welcome to the AlkaliYogi. All right, so chapter 3 is actually about, like I said to you a minute ago, nutrition, the no diet, because it's important that these changes become a lifestyle. This is not a quick fix. This is not Beyonce trying to lose 20 pounds on the master cleanse so that she can play a character on Dreamgirls. No, this is your life. This is your body, your vessel, which is the only thing that is with you from birth until transition, right? Until you're passing. So consider that. If you wish to avoid living through the expression of your potential genetic flaws, you must do your very best to determine which fuel sources meet your genetic requirements so that you can accentuate your genetic strengths instead. What does that mean? It means that whilst, yes, you've been dealt a particular hand, you could call it a gun, if you will, when it comes to your genetics and your DNA, whether or not you load that gun up with ammunition depends on your environment. Your nurture versus nature, right? Your nature is what God gave you, but your nurture is, do you bring forth the flaws or do you bring forth the strengths? That's why it simply doesn't fly when celebrities especially are like, oh, I went ahead and removed this body part and cut out this breast and removed this uterus because genetically in my family, this happens to run through our genetics. Well, you could make behavioral modifications that actually prevent that flaw from sort of living up to its fullest potential, right? You can do things about it. Now, if the health professionals told you that, they would be losing a great deal of money because they obviously benefit when you come in for any kind of surgery, right? But consider that, again, you are a system of systems. There is no junk DNA. Everything is required. Your breasts are required. Your ovaries are required. Your hysterectomies are required. Somebody said to me once, who I actually love a great deal, and it really hurt me to hear her say this, is that her uterus was a ticking time bomb. That is not the attitude that you want to have towards your body parts. Your body parts are here to serve you. If you are able to give them what they need, the same way that you would feed a child what they need to become healthy and strong and vital and energetic and hopefully a positively contributing person in society, is how you should treat your organs. Why would you take that kind of approach, that sort of negative attitude towards your body? Your body is a recorder. It is consistently recording everything you feel and think subconsciously and unconsciously. And if you're going to have these negative feelings towards your body, then of course you're going to manifest. It will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Another way I want to remind you, or show you guys rather, that your body is a recorder is by reminding you that you are 70% water. And water is a recorder. Just like the planet Earth, 70% water, which means everything in nature is recording. So if you're grateful to the blades of grass that you're stepping on, if you're grateful to the sunlight and the atmosphere, if you're grateful for the food that you eat, which is also 70% water, that will have a huge impact on how these things correlate or interrelate or contribute to your overall health and wellness. Master Emoto did some phenomenal clinical studies that have been replicated by the top universities in the world, but quite frankly, you could replicate at home. I highly recommend reading the book Hidden Messages in Water, just to, again, get a greater overstanding and understanding so that you have, instead of this angst and animosity towards a body and organs and DNA that are here for you, that are innocent, that are able to give you whatever it is that you tell them you need. If you tell them what you need is to be sick and that they're awful, they will give you that. If you tell them that they're great and that they can get stronger and better, and you're prepared to give them the fuel and the love and the attention and the intention to make that so, you'll see how things shape up for you quite differently. So the good news is that you can slim down without being hungry whilst feeding your body what it needs and when it needs it, so that you have a fighting chance to deal with the social, economic, and environmental stressors inherent in modern life. There can never be any one diet or product that works for everyone. We must all discover which formula works for our biochemical and cultural individuality. That should stand out to you, because over the last 2 years, they've been telling us that everybody should be doing exactly the same thing in order to avoid a virus. I'm not even going to call it a deadly virus, because when something has a 99.6% recovery rate, it cannot be referred to, even scientifically, as deadly, right? So, as we now know, unfortunately, those that transitioned and perished after having caught said virus had at least 4 or more comorbidities, right? So other ailments. When you continue to add insult to injury, right? At some point, the body's ultimate symptomology is death when it gets overloaded. So that's not surprising. But for people that are healthy, a 99.6% recovery rate does not, by any stretch of the imagination, qualify as deadly. So to suggest that everyone do one thing is quite literally insane. And I hope that at this point, at the very least, if you didn't see it earlier, that you're able to sort of see that, accept that, and understand that now. This is part of you growing up from child to adulthood. And in chapter 1 on Monday, if you watched the video that I included in that, it's where Paul Chek talks about us becoming, us growing up, basically. It's a wake-up call to stop just being told and indoctrinated, told what to do, but actually researching things, finding the other side, because everything has to have a second side. There's a yang yin, a masculine feminine. For one scientific study that proves A, you have to have another scientific study that proves B, period. That's the way it's always worked. And part of growing up means that if the powers that be, meaning the politicians, the celebrities, who are putting their 2 cents in, oddly enough, if they're not going to give you the other side, then you have to go and look for it yourself. And if that side is being suppressed, if that second side is being suppressed, that should also make you take heed. Because as Paul Chek just said, anything worth believing is worth challenging. Anything worth living is worth challenging. And quite frankly, when we look back at history, it is oftentimes those that were censored that were right. Because if your narrative had enough merit to stand on its own right, you would not feel the need to censor. You would be up for a debate. You would be up for tete-a-tete. Carrying on. A breakthrough concept, biochemical individuality. Dun, dun, dun. Who would have thunk it? We are just as different on the inside as we are on the outside. In 1956, Roger Williams, a famous biochemist, published a book entitled Biochemical Individuality. This unique and highly respected book outlined many of the anatomical variations that exist within each of us. For example, Williams revealed that there are variances in size, shape, location, and capacity of virtually all of our internal organs. He showed that there is a tremendous difference in metabolic rate from one person to the next, even from as clearly as 2 years of age. He found wide variations in water content and in oxygen carrying capacity of the blood from one person to the next. In short, just as we all look different on the outside, we all function differently on the inside and have nutritional needs, different nutritional needs. The pioneering studies of Dr. Weston A. Price. Weston A. Price documents the most thorough investigation of dietary variations among primitive peoples in his book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. In the early 1930s, Price traveled the globe investigating relationships between health and diet amongst native people. That is a great book. I highly recommend it, guys. I'm going to jump ahead a bit. Our goal here is to fine tune our senses so that you become acutely aware from meal to meal what your body needs to optimize your genetic potential and suppress your genetic weaknesses. Hence how Weston A. Price came up with metabolic typing. Paul Chek does something very similar called primal pattern. In fact, I believe that primal pattern is really just an expansion on Dr. Weston's initial questionnaires for how to determine your quote unquote metabolic type, which is pretty much returning to you a way of eating and nourishing your body in the way that your ancestors would have nourished their body. So based on what your ancestral makeup is, going back to that particular land, observing what it is that they ate there, because that would have been what would have been available to them. They wouldn't have been able to bring in, for instance, if they were Scandinavian, they wouldn't have been able in the 1930s to bring in pineapples from Jamaica or Hawaii. They would have merely had cod and salmon and dairy products and just very high fat, low carbohydrates type diets or nutrition, right? So that is to say that if you're Scandinavian or an Eskimo, this is in fact what you should be eating. And things like tropical fruits should be minimal, really and truly, because again, your body is connected to the soil from which you came from. Your ancestors are running through your veins. That is what your DNA is made up of. And so therefore it makes sense that you would be eating what they were eating, which is why as a holistic practitioner, even though I, at times have referred to myself as a Sabian, even though I'm a big believer in Dr. Morse's theory, certainly when you are healing from something, especially something that could be terminally ill, I see the benefits of going 100% vegan or even raw. But outside of that, if you're just looking to improve on your health, but you don't have anything that's life or death, I would say go back to your primal pattern or your metabolic type of nutrition. And so Dr. Weston identified what he calls a carbohydrate type. So those would be people that are in hot tropical climates that have more access to fruits and vegetables. A protein type, which would be people like Scandinavians and Eskimos that live in colder climates that eat less carbohydrates and more high fatty, gamey meats. And then you have sort of the mixed type, which are people that, due to, again, what's the term I'm looking for? Excuse me. Which based on your cultural diversity, rather, your cultural makeup, your race, whether you're mixed, et cetera, might be mixed. Now, Paul Chek has a different way of referring to a protein type. He actually calls a protein type a polar type. And he refers to a carbohydrate type as an equatorial type, and he refers to a mixed type as a variable type. But they're very, very similar. Like I said, they've been they very much rely on each other. In fact, Dr. Weston actually did the foreword in this book for Paul Chek. So once you have determined which of those you are, a polar, an equatorial, or a variable, I'm going to use Paul Chek's terminology because this is his book that I'm reading from. If you are, for instance, a polar type, then you are a person. And by the way, we come to that conclusion based on a series of questionnaires that we present to you. But you can also find this questionnaire in this book. So if you have this book, you can take the questionnaire here. And if I'm not mistaken, you can actually take it online as well. I would invite you to look up... go ahead and go on to the How to Eat, Move, and Be Wealthy website. I think it's on there. And if not on there, look up metabolic typing and go on to the metabolic typing diet website. And you should be able to take one of their questionnaires to, again, determine which type you are. So beginning with the polar type, this type of person should be eating primarily, again, gamey, fatty meats and high content, and their diet should consist of high fat. Proteins are considered anything that has a set of eyes, so including fish. Cows, of course, pigs, etc., birds, fowl. The exceptions to the rules would be avocados, seeds, and nuts, which are all quite high in fat, but they don't have eyes. So they are still part of the protein and fats, portion that we would like to see on your plate as a polar type, which should be about anywhere between 45 to 55% of your plate if you're a polar type, and you know this for certain. 45 to 55% of your plate should in fact be proteins and fats, proteins being your eyes and fats being the avocados, the oils, the seeds, etc. If you are a carbohydrate type, then the majority of your plate should be, again, about 50 to 55% carbohydrates, which are not breads, rice, and pasta, but are veggies, preferably raw, to be honest with you, right? Because again, even though you know, cooked food is acceptable, you want to be primarily eating raw food in general as sort of like a lifestyle choice when it comes to procuring fruits and vegetables, because that's when these organisms are most alive. And remember that your food is not your entertainment. It is quite literally your fuel and your medicine. So when we cook foods, we tend to kill off some of those enzymes. So cooked food in moderation is fine. If you're going to have one cooked meal a day, that's great, especially if you're not trying to cure anything. But otherwise, I would want to see you eating your carbohydrates primarily raw, especially since if you're going to have protein on your plate, which you need to have some protein anyways, it's going to be probably cooked, right? Unless you're eating raw beef or raw fish, which, is fine too. But even if those proteins are raw, I just returned from Ethiopia, actually, and raw meat is quite prevalent. Kitfo is a huge, huge dish in Addis Ababa. Yeah, if you're going to be eating, your fruits and vegetables, they should be primarily raw most of the times. I would prefer it to be an 80-20, where 80% of your fruits and vegetables are raw. 80% vegetables are raw, and 20% of the time they're cooked. That would be ideal for me if I were consulting you. Carbohydrates, again, they do not have eyes. Potatoes are considered carbohydrates, even though they technically have eyes. But carbohydrates are your fruits, vegetables, legumes, and grains. But legumes and grains can seriously back you up. If you're somebody that is already struggling, your lymphatic system is not working optimally. For instance, I'm still working on my lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is actually what removes waste. It's the elimination and the removal of toxins and waste in the body, right? So you would see that how well your lymphatic system is working based on whether or not there's an absence of like itchy skin, how many bowel movements you have, etc. So if you're a person that's often backed up and not pooping after every single meal. You should be pooping, by the way, after every single meal. So if you're eating 3 times a day, you should be having 3 bowel movements a day, approximately 30 minutes after you've had your meal. And you want to see about 12 to 24 inches of stool every 24 hours leaving the body. So if you're struggling and you're not hitting those quote unquote targets and milestones just yet, I would say make that 50 to 55% of your carbohydrates on your plate raw fruits and vegetables, and really reduce the amount of grains and legumes that you're reliant on as far as carbohydrates, because you clearly need to build up your lymphatic system so that it's draining and removing toxins. Grains and legumes can in fact back you up. There's not as much fiber. When you're eating the right foods in your correct proportions for your primal pattern diet, you should feel satisfied after you've eaten. So not hungry and not full. And your energy levels should increase. That's quite the opposite of what we've been told, right? Which is we're accustomed to like being lethargic and wanting to just lay out on the sofa and undo our first undo our button on our denim, on our jeans or what have you, our trousers. But that's not how you're supposed to feel. Your food, again, is your fuel, right? So you should feel like, whoa, okay, I got what I needed, almost like you've just come from a nap. You should feel more clear, less foggy in the mind, more alert, and certainly more energized to get through whatever tasks you have before you. And you should not be feeling hungry for a good 4 hours or so. That's how you know that you have eaten well for your body and your nutrition. Tips for polar types. Polar types, if you know this is you, also known as protein types, if you're coming from the metabolic typing questionnaires, take note. Sleep better and wake up rested. If, sorry, let me rewind that. Polar types, these are tips for you. You will find that you will sleep better and wake up more rested if you eat a meal that is higher in fat and protein closer to bedtime, typically within 2 to 3 hours or even less. There is this is the very reason why polar types need to be very careful of what they have for dessert and what they drink, particularly within a few hours of bedtime. Symptoms such as chronic headaches, depression, chronic fatigue, poor concentration in the morning, back pain, neck pain, constipation, and low sex drive clear up immediately by simply balancing blood sugar levels in polar types, particularly at dinner time just before bed. So look at that. How many of these things that I've just mentioned to you does Big Pharma have a fix and a pill for you? Again, I'm going to reread these to you. Chronic headaches, depression, chronic fatigue, poor concentration in the morning, back pain, which is very prevalent today, neck pain, constipation, and low sex drive all clear up by simply balancing out your blood sugar levels if you're a polar type, particularly at dinner time before bed. People, if you don't have health insurance, God forbid, which is tragic in and of itself, but it is a reality for many people in this country being the United States, then here's how you can save yourself money. Regulate your own blood sugar. Look at that. You wouldn't even need to take a pill. And there are so many pills on the market for all of these things if you just knew how to eat accordingly for your body type. If that is not empowering, fam, I don't know what is. Many polar types, particularly those needing to lose body fat, will find that they do better eating smaller balanced meals more frequently. So rather than having 3 big meals, you're encouraged to have 5 smaller meals. Tips for equatorial types. If this is you, pay attention. If you're coming from the metabolic typing world, then you would know this as a carbohydrate type. Equatorial types don't efficiently metabolize fats and protein, which is why you are an equatorial or a carbohydrate type. They don't typically metabolize these fats and proteins very well when they're eaten alone. So you have to pair them with fruits and vegetables. Vitamins are like nails, and your micronutrients are like the wood that are used to build a boat. So if you think that you can get away because you're an equatorial type or a carbohydrate type off just supplements and vitamins, then you are incorrect. Your vitamins and your minerals need to come from fruits and veg. The example that Paul Chek gives is it's like building a boat. Your supplements can be considered the nails, and sure, you can get great quality supplements potentially if you know where to source them, and you can call those your golden nails. But if the wood, which is what makes up the ship primarily, right, the edges and the bottom of the boat which are being held by the nails, if that's made out of rubbish wood or inefficient wood or whatever material you're using, it's typically wood, right? Well, that's what is building you up, right? That's the food is building up the wood, if you will, of the ship. The supplements are building up the nails. And if the nails are strong, but the wood itself, that which is the structure itself, is not well, then you're basically throwing good money down the toilet. Equatorial types often do well on only 2 meals a day. So we're seeing quite a bit of difference, aren't we, between polar and equatorial types. Polars needing to have or can eat up to 5 meals a day and seem to do very well on that. Equatorial types tend to do very well on 2 meals a day, which can lead to friends and family members, especially mothers and grandmothers, putting the pressure on you to eat against your instincts. So again, take accountability. Your yes means nothing if you don't know how to say no. Your yes is meaningless if you don't have a strong no to back it up. So know when to say thank you, mom, thank you, grandma, not today. Variable types. Those are the people that are considered mixed if you're coming from the metabolic typing world. I am currently a variable type. Interesting note, you should test yourself every few months. I would say even once a quarter, because it can fluctuate due to things like hormones and stress levels, physiological load, which is, again, your ability to process and digest life, spiritual relationships, and other energetic relationships, romantic relationships, career, etc. So you have to know that because you are a human that is living, thankfully. The only constant is change. So things can change. Typically, you don't necessarily vacillate between all three, but you might vacillate between two. I've seen myself going from a carbohydrate type, which is not surprising because my family is from Eritrea, which is fairly close to the equator, to currently a variable type for whatever reason. And so testing every, quarter is not a bad idea, and just fine tuning, right? So a variable type, which is what I am currently, will start proportioning their proteins. So the I group proteins, well, it's the I group with the fats, right? Proteins you have to couple them with fats always, with 50% from the no eyes food group, which is your carbohydrates, fruits and veg, to maximize the chances of achieving health and vitality. The variable types also need to study and become intimate with the methods of fine-tuning meals as presented on the tachometer, which is a great tool that, again, is available to you in this book. And the tachometer basically is breaking down for you if you are a carbohydrate type or an equatorial type and you have had too much protein. Based on the long term, you might suffer from symptoms such as XYZ. So in order to reduce the impact of those symptoms, this is what you need to do immediately in order to come out of that zone, which would be considered like a red zone, to come back into a zone that is a blue zone, which is ideally where you want to be. The red and the green zones are the zones which you want to avoid. The blue zone is what you want to be in. It also gives you tips for the opposite. For instance, if you're a polar type or a protein type, if you had too much protein, how would you come back sort of into the middle, which is the blue area? So this is a very useful tool for you. It's only available for you in the book. So if you are interested in delving more into that, of course, you'll find that information on the book, but it might also be available to you on how to eat, move, and be healthy. Full transparency, I have not been to the website, but I do know that there's a website to accompany this book. So have a look. You might be pleasantly surprised. And if you go over there, let us know in the comment section. Other people can benefit from that. But I will give you a couple of these tips just to give you something to walk away with. Yeah. Health tips. If you've had too many carbohydrates, right away you want to, in the short term, if you've had too many carbohydrates, you will want to eat fats, drink water, or exercise. Conversely, if you've had too much fat or protein, you will want to right away eat some carbohydrates, preferably that are high glycemic, such as below ground veggies and fruits. Those are the veggies actually that tend to be the sweetest, like potatoes and carrots and beets. Consume fresh squeezed juice or fruit, and take digestive enzymes containing protease and lipase. So again, we're just kind of quickly going through this, so I can't be more specific, but of course, you can do some more research or reach out to me, a holistic practitioner. Putting it all together, on your plate. Not all vegetables are created equal. Grains and corn also have high glycemic index. This information is particularly important to polar types. Pay attention, because they're the most sugar sensitive and should consume carbohydrates that have lower glycemic index. For drinks, failure to consider the carbohydrate content of drinks is the number one reason why people have less than optimal results when they begin their primal pattern diet. For example, a 12-ounce can of cola has 40 grams of carbohydrates. Remember, everything summates, guys, which is equal to about 12 one-cup servings of romaine lettuce, 2 servings of homemade potato salad, a cup of long grain rice, or 1.5 baked potatoes. Just 6 ounces of orange juice from concentrate delivers 21.3 grams of carbohydrates. Alcoholic beverages such as vodka and whiskey, they don't have the same carbohydrate content that soft drinks or juices do, but many others such as wine coolers, liquors, and cocktails do have very high sugar content. A rule of thumb to consider is that any sweet or alcoholic drink equal to at least 1 serving of your non-food eyes group. So again, consider any dessert or alcoholic beverage to be 1 serving of carbohydrates for polar types. You are what you eat, and you can't make or replace anything in your body with soda or processed garbage drinks. In short, to balance your meals effectively and to get optimal energy from food, you need to consider the fat content of also butter, dressings, and gravies. Everything counts, guys. Sauces such as teriyaki, sweet and sour, have a lot of sugar and can push you over your carbohydrate limit. Again, this is specifically for polar types. Fatty acid supplements, they are needed. Whilst they can be a good needed, whilst they can be a needed source of omega-3s, they can also throw you off of your meal balance if you're not careful. This is more often the case for the equatorial types because they are far more sensitive to fats. Oh, so now, I'm sorry, guys. This one is actually a tip for carbohydrates. Equatorial types are the carbohydrate types. A little experimentation will show you, will soon teach you rather, how many fatty acid supplements you can take with any given type of protein or meal combination. Should an essential fatty acid supplement be needed for therapeutic reasons, you may need to adjust and increase the carb content for your meals. Again, this is for you carbohydrate equatorial types. Desserts. If you're going to have dessert once in a while, make sure to calculate it into your eyes to no eyes ratio. If you're a polar type, this may mean you skip a carbohydrate completely with your dinner or consume only a small amount. All right. And that, I believe, sums up, our chapter 3, guys, for nutrition. So if you have more specific questions, again, feel free to reach out, do a little bit more of your research. Let me know what your thoughts are and if you found this useful and beneficial. Until next time, I'm going to sign off. I hope you continue to be well and stay well. Much love. Thank you all for supporting. Bye.